In 45 pages, special counsel Jack Smith takes us on a tour of all of the places where former President Donald Trump knowingly and repeatedly lied to pressure state and local officials to change their election results. In Detroit, Trump allegedly claimed that there had been a suspicious dump of votes after polls closed. The whole city was totally corrupt, he said. In Philadelphia, Trump publicly maligned a city commissioner for saying there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud in Philadelphia. In Atlanta, Trump and co-conspirator one, Rudy Giuliani, repeatedly pointed to the State Farm Arena as the locus of voter fraud in the state of Georgia. Giuliani publicly smeared election workers Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. He accused these two black election workers of passing around USB ports as if they're vials of heroin or cocaine. Literally no evidence to support that. Now, what do all three of those places have in common? Most voters in those places are black and brown. At the heart of Trump's alleged plot to overturn the 2020 election is an unrelenting effort to disenfranchise black and brown voters specifically. And as it turns out, that is a felony. Yesterday, special counsel Smith charged Trump under Section 241 of the U.S. Criminal Code, the Ku Klux Klan Act, the KKK Act. The act dates back to 1870 when the Klan was on the rise, harassing black people and preventing them from exercising their right to vote, including the right to have their votes counted. Now, count 4 of this new indictment accuses Trump of violating Section 241 by conspiring to injure, oppress, threaten, and intimidate one or more persons in the free exercise and enjoyment of the right to vote and to have one's vote counted. Joining us now is Maya Wiley, civil rights attorney, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, and president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. Maya, there's no better person to talk to about this. I was very fired up about this yesterday because to me, it did not seem like a coincidence that there's a distinct racial project at the heart of the KKK Act. And there seems to have been a distinct racial, which is to say racist project at the heart of Trump's efforts to disenfranchise votes. This was not a coincidence. They were black and brown votes that he was trying to get discounted.
Well, look what Donald Trump had to do to try to steal the 2020 election from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. He had to go to places where he had to try to find votes or get folks to say, oh, no, those weren't the votes. We won't counter certify those. We've got our own electors. But they were concentrated with people of color because Trump was not going to win a lot of people of color. And that's why we have Georgia. That's why we had Detroit, which is in the indictment very prominently
Maricopa
as well.
County.
Maricopa County. So, well, even remember that in Arizona, he kept saying all these aliens, all these undocumented immigrants, which is another code word for people who are Mexican and living in the state. So this is something we have seen from Trump and heard from Trump. It is critically important to understand that, frankly, all the big lie, which is not even a new lie, it's an old lie. Donald Trump just kept pulling it out, dusting it off, and using it for his own ends, was always to make it harder for black and brown people to vote and people in Indian country because they were predictably Democratic voters. And so if you didn't have the numbers the way you could get them, make it harder for the brown folks and the black folks to vote.
92% of black voters in the 2020 election voted for Joe Biden, right? That's a political reality that Donald Trump was well aware of. But also the Trump project is centered on white grievance, which doesn't leave a lot of room for people of color, right? I mean, it's a snake eating its own tail to some degree. I just kind of wonder whether there's something, whether this can be talked about explicitly, because I think right now it's in there as a statute and it's sort of generally depriving people of rights, generally depriving them of having their votes counted. But because of the history with this law, because of the reality of what Trump is doing in terms of targeting communities of color, can we connect those two dots? Do you think that was sort of the intention of Special Counsel Smith? Is it an Easter egg of sorts hidden in that indictment?
I can't speak for Jack Smith, but I will say that the Legal Defense Fund, where I used to work back in the day, that Thurgood Marshall, first black Supreme Court judge, justice founded, filed this suit and called it out explicitly, starting in Wayne County, starting in Michigan, saying Donald Trump is actively trying to prevent black votes from counting. That was very explicit, and they expanded it to Philadelphia, to Georgia, to other cities. That lawsuit is still moving forward in the courts. The district court, federal court in Washington, D.C. would not allow it to be thrown out. So they have been explicit about it as a civil rights litigating organization, as my former organization, and as a member of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. We're really glad and grateful. But I think to your point, Alex, it's one of the things we've been trying to make very clear about the importance of this indictment is that, you know, we have constitutional rights more perfected in this not so perfect union because we have fought for civil rights for black people, for Mexicans, for people who are Native American, for people who are Asian, for all kinds of people who actually deserve to be protected in their rights to participate in our democracy because they're lawfully allowed to vote.
Yeah.
But it protects everyone. And this is the point about accountability in this indictment and calling out that this was about stealing voters' voice.
Yeah.
But also the fact that we have a statute that comes from the need to protect the voices of black people because they were being killed or beaten up or threatened just because they were trying to go to the polls and vote or hold on to their elective office.
And I would say this is not the first time a Trump ally has been, I think, charged and in this case convicted of disenfranchising black votes. In 2023, a Trump supporter was found guilty of a scheme on Twitter telling black voters to vote for Hillary Clinton by text in 2016, which, of course, you cannot do. And this person explicitly wanted to limit black turnout. This is a strategy employed, I'm not going to say at the highest levels, although it seems like we have some evidence to that end, but it is part of the Trump project to explicitly disenfranchise black voters.
They're very fine people on both sides, Alex. Didn't you know that?
Yeah. I mean, Maya Wiley.
And Proud Boys.
Yeah, stand back and
stand by.
We know, yeah, they say the quiet part out loud. Maya Wiley, thank you for your time and your expertise, as always.
Thank you.